So let's talk about one of the most talked about true crime cases happening right now, and the woman at the center of it all, Kouri Richins. On the surface, she seems like a devoted mom from Utah, a successful real estate agent, and even a published author. But prosecutors are painting a very different picture. You see, after her husband Eric died suddenly back in 2022, Kouri actually wrote this children's book. The whole point, she said, was to help her three young sons work through their grief. She even went on local TV to talk about it, explaining how important it was to her to keep her husband's memory alive for the kids. But then, just a little over a year after he died, the story takes this unbelievable twist that turned a local tragedy into a story the whole world was watching. The grieving widow, the children's book author, she was arrested and accused of poisoning her husband with a massive, lethal dose of fentanyl. So how in the world did we get here, right? To really get what the prosecution is arguing, we've got to rewind and look at the years leading up to Eric's death. Because according to them, this was a marriage that was completely falling apart, mostly because of financial secrets. Okay, so the prosecution lays out this timeline, and it starts with their prenup. It basically said Kouri would only inherit Eric's business if he died while they were still married. Then, they say, her own real estate business started racking up huge debts. But the real turning point, they claim, was in 2020. That's when Eric apparently discovered she was misusing his money and, without telling her, secretly cut her out of his will, putting his sister in charge of everything instead. And we are not talking about small change here. The stakes were incredibly high. Eric Richins' estate, between his successful masonry business and everything else, was worth around $5 million. And that number, it's at the absolute heart of the prosecution's argument that this was all about money. And this is where you see two completely different stories emerge. On one side, you have Kouri's family and friends who say she was this amazing, successful real estate flipper. But then you look at what prosecutors are saying in court documents, and they claim she was actually about to go under, drowning in nearly $1.8 million of debt the day Eric died. Okay, so we've got the alleged financial motive. But how does that actually build into the accusation of murder? Well, the state's theory isn't that this was some impulsive act. No, they claim it was a calculated plot that started weeks before Eric actually died. Prosecutors say this incident on Valentine's Day was basically a trial run. The story goes, Kouri made Eric a sandwich, and right after eating it, he got incredibly sick, broke out in hives, couldn't breathe. He was so shaken that he later told a friend, point blank, "I think my wife is trying to poison me." Now, the defense argues there's zero proof this ever even happened. So where did the actual murder weapon come from? Well, prosecutors say their key witness, a housekeeper known as CL, has the answer. She claims that after that Valentine's Day incident, Kouri came to her asking for stronger drugs, allegedly requesting, and this is a quote, some of the Michael Jackson stuff, a pretty clear reference to a powerful and deadly opioid. And the autopsy revealed just how tragic the outcome was. The amount of illicit fentanyl they found in Eric's system was 5 times the lethal dose. The medical examiner was crystal clear. This was no accident. It was a massive, fatal poisoning. But here's where the story gets really complicated. Because as this case heads toward a trial, what once might have looked like a slam dunk for the prosecution, well, it's starting to show some pretty big cracks. The defense has been working hard, and some of the state's evidence is starting to look a little shaky. This right here is a massive problem for the prosecution. Their entire story of how Kouri got the fatal dose of fentanyl depended on a chain of 2 people. But now, the guy who supposedly supplied the drugs has signed a legal document saying he never sold fentanyl, only Oxycontin. It doesn't kill the housekeeper's testimony, but man, it leaves a huge hole for the defense to exploit. Then you've got the walk the dog letter. It was found in her jail cell, and prosecutors say it's blatant witness tampering, Kouri trying to get her brother to invent a story linking Eric to drugs. But the defense has a pretty wild explanation. They claim she was just writing a fictional mystery novel. The judge didn't totally buy that and has decided most of the letter can be used as evidence. And in what has to be a series of major blows to the prosecution, the judge has ruled that the jury in the murder trial will not hear a ton of stuff. We're talking about dozens of other alleged financial crimes. Any testimony from a domestic violence expert? Nope. Statements she made before being read her Miranda rights? Out. All of a sudden, proving that financial motive just got a whole lot harder. Look, regardless of how this specific trial turns out, the allegations against Kouri Richins fit into this really chilling and, frankly, often overlooked pattern of homicide. Forensic psychologists have actually studied this exact method, a method designed to be completely invisible. It's a concept called proactive staging, and it was really detailed by forensic psychologist Dr. Joni Johnston. And here's the core idea. Unlike a typical murder where the killer tries to cover their tracks after the fact, with proactive staging, the method of killing is the cover-up. The goal is to create a death that never ever looks like a murder to begin with. So, think about what we usually see in movies, right? Wiping fingerprints, planting a weapon, that's all reactive staging. It happens after the person is already dead, and it often leaves mistakes. Proactive staging, on the other hand, is all about creating a perfectly clean scene because you want the death certificate to read heart attack or natural causes. And researchers have found there are usually 3 hallmarks to this kind of crime. First, the poison is often given slowly, over time, to make it look like a real illness. Second, the poisoner plays the part of the doting, loving caregiver. I mean, it's the ultimate alibi, right? And third, there's almost always a big financial motive, like an insurance policy that only pays out if the person dies naturally. And here's the really scary part. Our system, law enforcement, medical examiners, it's just not designed to catch these crimes. The cases that do get solved, it's often because the killer tried it again on someone else, or a suspicious family just refused to give up, or sometimes it's just pure dumb luck. So as the Kouri Richins trial begins, this case forces us to ask a really unsettling question. It's not just about one woman in Utah. It's about a type of crime that exploits our most basic ideas about love and care, leaving all of us to wonder, how many perfect cover stories are out there completely undetected?